Hi, and a warm welcome to our Tacton Summit, Conscious Manufacturing. My name is Cecilia Hammarin, and I'm the host for our summit this spring. This time, our summit is a two-day event where we today will focus on the why. Why should sustainability be on your agenda, and how technology can be an enabler and support conscious manufacturing? Let's get started. Our first keynote speaker, Nils Olsson, our Chief Product Officer here at Tacton, is an experienced business transformation leader. Nils has plus 20 years of experience working with IT companies and the industrial sector, where Nils has helped companies with portfolio management and product development. So happy to have you here with us today, Nils. A warm welcome, and I'm really excited to listen to your presentation on why sustainability must be on the manufacturing agenda. And I'll hand over the word to you, Nils, to get started whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. First of all, it's of course great to be part of the Tacton Summit here around sustainability. It's a topic that is taking a lot of focus from us at Tacton, and will continue to do so for many years to come. So, of course, the key topic itself is widely well known. We encounter sustainability in so many different areas of our daily lives. The big thing I just wanted to do here, though, to try and get a little bit of let's call it a framing of sustainability and where Tacton comes into play is, of course, as you said, why sustainability must be on the manufacturing agenda. Sustainability is important, we all know that, but there are a couple of key reasons why manufacturing and sustainability are intertwined in ways that perhaps are not obvious at first glance. So the first thing I wanted to do was to look at this kind of from a big picture point of view. When it comes to manufacturing, we don't often think about it, but manufacturing is actually the foundation of the modern world. Throughout the existence of mankind, we've gone from Stone Age people, hunter-gatherers, to farmers, and over the past few centuries, we've of course had the Industrial Revolution and all that entails. Very often we think about industry as something, it's machines, and it's gritty, and it's dirty and stuff like that. But if you take a close look at it, it's actually what makes our entire way of living possible. Everything we do, just me getting to work using the subway, or right now being part of this online conference, is all made possible through devices, things that have been manufactured. The image here is a great image. When we think about the developing world, for instance, we don't imagine that to be keeping up perhaps in the same way as we see in highly industrialized societies. But the fact is they're actually leapfrogging. So cell phones, for instance, are the most common possessions throughout Africa and parts of Asia, where the other types of amenities and tools available are perhaps not as advanced. And of course, this is made possible by manufacturing, by efficient manufacturing, being able to put the infrastructure in place, being able to also have the devices manufactured at a cost which is attainable for these people. So manufacturing is really at the core of our evolution, and it will be in the future. There is really no way of turning the clock back and saying that we live in a world without many of the comforts and enablers, because at the end of the day, it's what gives us a good life. It's what makes us being able to keep our children safe and even make our parents proud in how we progress through life. However, as we know, manufacturing comes with a flip side to the coin. I believe we had a speaker in the previous session who mentioned this as well. Manufacturing is, at the end of the day, responsible for nearly a quarter of the worldwide emissions. And this is, of course, something that goes very much in contrast with what I was just saying before. So the key question here is not how we can make, everything just sustainable. It's about how we can make sure that people thrive. It's about making sure that we can have companies and development that is profitable, but of course also make sure that we safeguard the planet so that we give the same chance for future generations to enjoy life as we would want them to. So with this huge impact that we're seeing from manufacturing in terms of the climate, and of course CO2 emissions being probably at the top of the agenda, even though there are many other things as well that are important to track. We do see public awareness growing. Public awareness has been on the rise for many decades. It started really off, I guess, in a big way in the 60s and 70s. But over the past, I would say, decade or so, it has kind of risen to a level of presence in people's minds and hearts that is quite different from what we saw in previous decades. It's not just about wanting to have clean and good way of coexisting together on this planet. It is actually kind of the centerpiece for a huge amount of people that are, at the end of the day, not only consumers, meaning that they're the ones ultimately buying the products that we manufacture. They're at least at the end of the value chain of the companies in manufacturing. But it also means that they're the voters putting people in place with power to make legislation. And I'll get back to that in a short moment. So saying green is the new black, it's a little bit of a catchy phrase here, of course, with a bit of a tongue-in-cheek ambition. But having a good way of addressing the requirements from consumers at the end of the day that will be shaping how our value chains operate is not just a nice to have or something that we can put a bit of green varnish or kind of green wash away. It really means taking this to the core of how we do things. It's not just about getting a little bit better. It's actually how can we make sure that our organization is in sync with the demands that we see in the marketplace. And there is actually data supporting this as well, which is really interesting. So this is a little bit older. I got this from an excerpt from the Financial Times, looking at companies between 2016 and 2020. And what's really interesting here is they did a study on what they called high purpose versus low purpose companies. What that means is basically high purpose, having high ambitions, having goals that are being set to contribute to a better world, and low purpose not having that same at least outspoken ambition. And the results are quite telling. So we're seeing the high purpose companies simply performing better. It's not a coincidence that when we're going on to different websites to buy different sorts of goods, that you pretty much everywhere have, of course, statements around sustainability, recycling, and emissions if you're booking flights and so forth. But of course, the really interesting thing is, if there is such a high attention to this, how do you make sure that you make the better choice? Even as a consumer, it's easy to keep track of one metric. It's kind of hard to keep track of all the different things that could be good. Just to give you an example, if I'm using an electric car, for instance, and I'm using it in two different countries, in one country there might be plenty of green energy, coming from replenishable sources, whereas in another country it's perhaps coal-based or other types of fossil fuel-based energy providers. And of course, what that means is that electric car will have a very different footprint in these different countries. So the key here is to make sure that you understand how to make the right choice. And of course, with the opinion being what it is, what we're seeing is that that opinion is starting now to turn into law. So there's legislation on the way, both in Europe and in the US. Europe is perhaps a little bit further along with the EU New Green Deal. But these laws that are getting put in place as we speak will have a profound effect, not just on having a little bit, of a good profile, but actually requirements that you need to live up to. There will be demands on what we need to be able to report, not just on a total company level, but down to the level of the goods that we sell. It's kind of like when you go into a hardware store and you're buying a fridge or a washing machine or something similar. You have these energy labels there. I believe what we're going to see is much more than just, kind of good or bad categories. We're going to see details here, and it's also going to sort of spell out the different areas that will be tracked much clearer, making it easier for consumers, easier for the value chain to make sure they make the right choices, but also, of course, putting a lot of requirements and demands, as I said, on the companies and the value chain. So we know that this is on the way, and one of the things that is quite clear is that it's not just, as I said, about measuring one or two things, and as we kind of see in some cases, companies being a little bit biased in terms of measuring things that are particularly good from their product's point of view. But it's really about the entire circular economy. It's of course sourcing the material, making sure that you refine it, getting that material shipped to a production or assembly place. But then you have the usage. And as I know Michael will touch on later on here, usage is a huge part of the impact when it comes to machinery that we at Tacton often work with, companies that produces different types of machines. And then, of course, you have the return as well. So all of these things will play a part in this. Exactly when, what legislation will come and exactly how tough it will be still remains to be seen to some degree. But making a move in this direction, trying to get a head start in terms of being able to answer these questions is going to be absolutely paramount. And that really brings me to the conclusion of what I wanted to say here in terms of why sustainability must be on the manufacturing agenda. Because you could see it as just a compliance. You could see it as something that, okay, you're legally bound by it. You're going to have to do things just because, the requirements are out there. I would kind of turn that around. When, for instance, GDPR was put in place, it was a European law. It was, basically a law that said you have to treat personal information in a certain way in Europe. But what it also did was it said, well, if you want to do business in Europe with Europeans, you also have to comply. And of course, what that in turn meant was all the different types of solutions and support throughout the value chain that companies that wanted to operate in Europe had to go through was to make sure that they were also GDPR supporting. And I think what we're going to see here in terms of sustainability is very, very similar. So for the companies that take this on in, let's say, a strong way, that actually goes the full mile and start looking at the life cycle, how your products from cradle to grave actually perform and how they will impact your customers, it's not just going to be a compliance matter. It's going to be a key way in terms of how we compete in the market. So with that, sustainability is a must in manufacturing, not just because of compliance, but it's actually a crucial part of being able to thrive as an organization in the market. So that was all I had right now. And I'm sure we're going to see some really interesting information here from the other presenters as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Nils, for sharing your insights and knowledge. And as I said previously, we'll take a few questions to deep dive into a few of the topics you mentioned. So, feel free to add comments in the comments field, and we try to cover as many as possible. But I can get started then with the first question, so people have time to add in the comments. So I think your point is clear here on the urgency, and you also highlighted the contribution from manufacturing with over 20% of the global emissions. And to change this and really make a difference, we need to have a change in the business models. And you also mentioned the European Green Deal, where the EU shows the focus and ambition to mobilize the industry for a clean and circular economy, as they call it, where they emphasize the need for a circular economy for several reasons. The European Commission also admits that it's a challenge for circular business model to take off and expand as the economy is driven today, and they like to see more investments being made and incentives to drive circular business model. They also share that they will provide guidance to boost circular business model, as well as bring different stakeholders together in the new European Circular Business Hub. So then from your side, and you being so close to the business and the market, what do you think we need to see to start change towards a more circular economy, and what are your insights from the market?
Well, I think the starting point, of course, is to agree on the ambition level, and that can be done in many different ways. I think a crucial step here is actually kind of what, in a sense, we're doing with this conference. It's a lot of collaboration. So I know that us at Tacton, how can we support? Well, we can of course support by doing stuff ourselves in terms of how we travel and so forth. But the key contribution is how we can raise the awareness of our customers, of companies in the manufacturing space, what they could do with our support. So how we could help them. And the only way that we're going to get to a really good understanding of that is, of course, through dialogue. We have to talk. So it's us talking to our customers. It's actually our customers talking to each other. It's participating in many of the forums that are available. It's not just us Tacton, right? There's a ton of forums that you can get information and get a better understanding of the possibilities at hand. So dialogue, communication, collaboration. I know it sounds kind of like a little bit flimsy, but at the end of the day, having the right information, having the right possibilities and capabilities is what's going to make a difference.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And also, it's also obvious that I think the EU Commission sees this and open up to public hearings and so forth to get feedback and see what companies and people have to say. So then, as you show, this is not only about compliance, but also about the competitive edge you mentioned. You also mentioned about the organizations with a higher purpose and companies that embrace sustainability, that they attract better employees and perform better in the market. And as you said, it's just fact. It's not just about being compliant. It's about the competitive edge again. So this affects both the customer and employer experience. Can you give and exemplify how you think this will affect the manufacturing industry for the next coming years?
I can just take a very simple example. Tacton, as many other companies, are of course hiring all the time. When we're trying to look for good people to join our organization, we're seeing that our position on sustainability is actually a key determining factor for people to join us. That is true everywhere. If you talk to millennials today, people of Generation Z, even more so, well, we all know Greta Thunberg and that stuff. So it's I would almost put it at the point of saying, unless you do have sustainability on the agenda, it's going to be really hard to operate in a good way, because you're going to lose out on talent, you're going to lose out on traction in the market, and so forth. So at the end of the day, not having it is as a basically at the top of the agenda is comparable to saying we don't care about cost, or we don't care about revenue or sales. I mean, it's actually that level of impact.